Last week we started talking about we three kings of Orient are who weren't kings and weren't from the Orient. And we left off talking about the gifts that they brought to the young child Jesus. These are listed in the story in Matthew as gold, frankincense, and myrrh. I remember hearing growing up in church that each of these gifts was symbolic of some aspect of who Jesus would be. Gold, recognizing his royalty. Frankincense, recognizing him as a god, because that might be burned in a temple setting. And then myrrh, that he was going to die, because it was often used in embalming practices back then. And while that's certainly a nice sentiment and sounds very Christian, I think it goes a little too far to suggest that those magi would have known all of that about Jesus. They do say King of the Jews, so they expected him to be a king, and I think that even shows in verse 11, where that reads that they worshipped him. I think a lot of Christians read that verse as meaning that they saw him as God, but we don't always remember in a modern Western context that in the ancient Near Eastern world, kings were basically worshipped as either gods or sons of gods often. So this wasn't suggesting the Christian idea of Jesus as God, as much as just recognizing that he would be a powerful ruler who would be considered a god at that time. And then to say that they knew he would die and that's why they gave the myrrh, I kind of doubt that would have been in their minds. And while I don't think that's necessarily an entirely invalid way to read the text, I do believe it draws attention away from a key hyperlink that we are supposed to be seeing with these three gifts mentioned, because they tie back to Isaiah chapter 60. And if we look there, God has been very hard on the Israelites through much of the book of Isaiah, talking about everything that they have done wrong over the years there. But it ends on this message of hope as we're getting toward the end of the book of Isaiah in chapter 60. And at this point, God is promising that he is going to restore the glory of Jerusalem, and that the nations are going to come to Jerusalem, to Israel, as a part of how God is able to reunite heaven and earth, get back to Eden, what we've been trying to do since page 1 of the Bible. And in verses 5 and 6, it reads, "Then you will see and flow together, and your heart will fear and be enlarged, because the abundance of the sea will be converted to you. The forces of the Gentiles will come to you. The multitude of camels will cover you, the dromedaries of Midian and Ephah." And catch this, "They from Sheba will come. They will bring gold and incense, and they will show forth the praise of Yahweh." So do you see the connection here? It's saying that when these nations come to Israel so that everyone in the area can celebrate the blessings that Yahweh has provided, they are going to bring gold and incense. Those are two of the three gifts that these magi are said to bring to Jesus. But you probably noticed we're missing one of the three gifts. What about the myrrh? Where does that fit in? Well, this is where you have to note the part just above where it talks about bringing gold and incense in. It mentions that all of Sheba would come as well. Now, there's one other really popular story in the Bible where Sheba plays an important role, and you might have already thought of it just when I said Sheba. That's 1 Kings 10, when the Queen of Sheba comes and visits Solomon trying to test his wisdom. Well, when she is satisfied with the answers that he gives, she offers him many different gifts, lots of gold, all of this. But verse 10 of 1 Kings 10 specifically also says that she gave him spices, which very well may have included myrrh. Now, I will admit it does not say myrrh specifically in Isaiah 60, but given that we have the other two gifts hyperlinked exactly there, and then the one other time that Sheba is really known for being in the Bible, it's with spices being mentioned, I can't help but think that that could be the intended connection there. Now, one other thing I want to mention here before we're done for the day, because this is still a video on the stuff that we think is in the Bible, but isn't actually there. If we go back to the story of these magi coming to see Jesus, and we go to Matthew chapter 2, specifically verse 11, I want you to pay close attention to how the verse begins. "When they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him." Now, did you catch anything interesting there? So often we depict these wise men, these three wise men usually, as being at the manger scene from Luke chapter 2. In fact, if you have a nativity set in your house or in front of your church or anything like that, you probably have three wise men, three kings, something along those lines, somewhere near the manger scene. But they are not in that story. The manger scene is only in Luke 2. It is not a part of Matthew's account. And it's not even that hard to see. We're just so used to assuming that they were at this nativity scene that we don't stop and actually read what is there in the text. Because verse 11 reads that they came to a house where, quote, the young child was. Not the baby, not the newborn, but a young child. Now, young child is still a pretty general term, so we don't know exactly how old Jesus would have been when they got there. But given that just a few verses later, when Herod realizes that he had been deceived, he makes a decree to kill all babies under the age of 2 in that region. So there are several scholars, and I would agree with them here, that think that suggests Jesus may have been anywhere between 1 and 2 years old by the time that these magi got there. So this Christmas season, when you see the 3 wise men or the 3 kings, just realize it may not be the most biblically accurate description. So if any of you want to cause a little bit of a ruckus this Christmas season, find the nearest nativity set and move the wise men far away from it so that they are traveling there and getting there after Jesus and his parents leave the manger. I've been doing that for several years now, and it always leads to some interesting conversations. But in all seriousness, though we don't know much about these magi in the story, they do play a crucial role in showing us that God's plan is not just for one specific people group, but he wants to bring all of us back into an Eden peace with him. So as you read that story, or whenever you see them in a nativity, or you hear we 3 kings of Orient are, rather than being too nitpicky about the details, let's appreciate what they represent in the story. And just like they remind us that God's love is for everybody, let's start to show that same love to those around us, not just this season, but all year round. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas, everyone.